My name is Richard Peña, and I'm a professor of film and media studies at Columbia University, and it's my great pleasure to be part of the series of upcoming conversations with French filmmakers, which is sponsored by Unifrance Film. I'm honored to have been asked to be part of this. I am especially happy to be beginning this series with a filmmaker whose work I admire and I've known for many years, Bertrand Bonello. Bertrand, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Hello.
Great to have you here. Looking over your work and your life, one of the things I saw is that you began equally in music as you did in film. Can you talk about the relationship of music to your cinema? Not only the fact that you often compose your scores, but the fact of how music and cinema perhaps are alike or are different.
Music came before, much before cinema. I do music since I'm a little kid, like 5, and at one moment I really wanted to be like a pianist, but I was too lazy. Then I wanted to be a conductor, but I was too lazy. Then I moved to pop and rock, and I became like a session musician, doing some records and tours for some people. And cinema was not a passion. I just knew films by watching TV. I was living in the countryside and stuff like that. And when I turned to like 24, 25, I imagined myself like at the age of 40, and I said, it's going to be boring. And I didn't know films more than that, but I had the intuition that I could try. And I did, as a musician, a big tour, like 2 years, and I saved like half of my salary every night. And I had like quite a lot of money, so I paid myself a short movie, 40 minutes. That was shot in Poland, and this is how I discovered cinema, in fact, by doing films. And at the same time, I was watching films a lot. And I have to say there is maybe one film that made me switch. It's Stranger Than Paradise. When I saw the film, I didn't saw it when it came out in 86.
82.
82, wow.
Oh,
84,
right, sorry.
But later, and when I saw the film, I mean, for me, I came out and said, okay, this is like music. It's like rock music. And I think this film was important for me for the switch.
Yeah, I think you're very correct about that, because Jim, of course, himself was a musician.
Yeah, I've learned that later. Yeah, and he's obsessed with music, and I know that music comes really early in the process of writing and stuff like that. Yes.
Let's talk about your first feature, The Pornographer. What was your original inspiration? Why did you begin with this story?
In fact, it's my second. I did one before. The Pornographer began like, at first it was a short movie, like the first 30 minutes of the film, with one question: can you do a beautiful porn scene? And I think the answer is no, like the film says, because there are codes in porn movies, and if you want to do something beautiful, you have to break the codes, and it's not porn anymore. But that was just a short movie. And then the film is made of questions, from a son to a father, in terms of intimacy, in terms of politics, in terms of cinema. I was born in 1968, which is very strong in France, and when I was young, I mean, I was really obsessed by what can we do now, because our parents did so much, and how to exist. And that was one of the questions of the film. Jérémy Régnier talking to Jean-Pierre Léaud, saying, okay, now what can we do? And many, many personal questions that I had in a notebook, and I decided to make a film with questions.
One of the things I wrote down in my own notes when I rewatched the film was that in many ways you almost treat pornography as the limit case for art. And in a certain way that the border of art kind of comes up against the border of pornography.
Yes, porn films, it's films. But it's very marginal films.
Right.
And I decided to I'm very interested by what is not in the center. And you saw Coma, and I talk a lot in the letters about that. And I really wanted at first a movie maker to play the part.
Right.
And I wrote the part for Philippe Garrel, which doesn't do porn films, but it's not in the center. You know, it's like I asked Jean-Luc Godard, I asked Maurice Pialat, and they all said no for different reasons. So I said, okay, I'm going to take an actor, and I asked Jean-Pierre. But I really wanted to treat porn films like someone lonely making films.
In this film and in a number of the films you made after this, there is a kind of discussion of what you might think of as the politics of eroticism, the way in which eroticism has a political dimension. Can you talk about that for a second?
Well, in the Pornographer, it's very clear because it comes. The guy is born in 1945. It's when 1968 arrives, he's very young, and he decides to make porn films in a political way. Of course, today it's more difficult, or if you do it, it's going to be something very close from feminism movement, stuff like that. But it was very different at that moment.
Right.
And when the son asks the father, "Why did you do these kind of films?" he answers politically. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be free. I didn't want to do revolution. I wanted to do this. This was my freedom, and I think it's true at that moment in France. So of course, politics and eroticism for me they're really related because it's how do you present yourself to the world? You know, what do you want to say to the world?
What was it like to actually direct porn actors in the film?
Well, it was very easy. Because, I mean, it's their job, you know. They're doing this every day. It's very, very clean, very... you do this, they do it, you know. I would never ask non-porn actors to do these kind of things because it would be very embarrassing. You have to take a lot of, here it's just what do you want us to do?
I can remember around the same time Catherine Breillat made her film Romance, and when I asked her, she said they were the greatest professionals I ever worked with. She said it was incredible. I mean, they did exactly what I asked them right away.
There's no problem for them. It's the job, you know. I just wanted to be sure that the porn actors I was using were very happy in their job, you know. Right. And there are some that are happy. Sure. You know? I met some girls very sad, and I didn't want that. And I want to be like someone that's going to save them or something. So a girl like OVD, she's a very clever girl. She's writing articles and books about what is it doing porn films. So it was very, very simple.
Let's move on to House of Tolerance. That film, one of the first things that struck me, I remember, struck many people, is just how ravishing it is, the real beauty of the film. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process of creating the mise en scène with your designers and everything. And I'm also wondering, do you do a lot of research into the period to try and be as accurate as you can be?
Yes, I love doing research. I mean, it takes like half of the writing, especially for period films. For House of Tolerance, I did, I don't know, maybe 6 months of research. And we talk a lot with my DP, José Dehaye. And we talk a lot, and she had this idea that the girls should be like jewels, you know, and we have to create a kind of box to put the jewels inside it. And then we exchange a lot of pictures. Not many films, just pictures, questions, and the main question is always the same. She asks me, "What do you want to see?" And I have to answer that. So
you go into the filming already with a kind of concept of how you want the film shot, in a way, in terms of just a general lessons or general kind of techniques you want to use.
Well, some things are very clear during the writing. And I take a lot of notes. I have my script on one page and notes in the other. And a lot of things appear little by little. By research, by the questions I have every day from my technicians, and I have to find answers. And by some things you try that do not work, and something that appear from reality, like a location, an actor or an actress. You know, at one moment reality comes into the film. when you are at your desk, a film is just a dream, and now you have to take it in the world, and reality arrives, and this is always an amazing moment.
I want to move on to Saint Laurent. This, I believe, was the first film, correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of came to you as opposed to a film that you devised from the very beginning. Talk about that approach, and what did they tell you? Just make a film about Saint Laurent? Or was there some other kind of theme or idea they wanted to get across?
No, they just came to me just after the screening of House of Tolerance. They were searching for a director doing a film about Saint Laurent, and they really liked the aesthetic of the film. So they came to me and said, "Are you interested in Saint Laurent?" But there was nothing else. No synopsis, no script, no book, nothing. And I hesitated for a couple of hours, and not more than that. And I said yes, because I could see everything that I could, take from the period, the man, the melancholy, the visual, all these things that were very close to me, in fact. So, as there was nothing except the name of Saint Laurent, I didn't have the idea, but I think I can say today it's my more personal film in a way. Because, I came from zero, and I was scared of the biopic. Doing a biopic is very scary. I don't really like biopics, and I was really obsessed to make it my more personal film.
There exists, of course, for someone like Saint Laurent, a huge archive of material, interviews, films, all kinds of things. How is that useful to you and to your wonderful actor, sadly the late Gaspard Ulliel?
It was very useful. I mean, I always say you have to invent reality and not reproduce reality. So when you have all these archives, it's good to have the sense of what's real and not, and then you have to create with that and not reproduce them. So it was a very hard work, because Saint Laurent, it's quite close in time. So people remind him, it's not, if you do a biopic about someone living in the 18th century,
of course,
it's more easy to invent. Here was more difficult. Some people still alive that knew him, a lot of movie stuff, TV stuff, and so. But it was, of course, useful to talk. What do we keep? What do we? You have this picture. Let's invent something to arrive to this picture, which is not what was real. But it's very stimulating.
I understand, and not to get into controversies, that you did not have cooperation from his estate. How did that hurt you, and how did it help you?
Hurt you in two ways. First, we didn't have access to the dresses, stuff like that, so we had to redo everything. It was a huge work, a lot of money, but we had atelier de haute couture, and they redid all the dresses from the défilés and stuff like that. It's true that Mr. Berger and I were not the best friends. I think for him it's too violent, that he doesn't control everything about something about Saint Laurent, and I needed freedom. It helped me in the way that, in fact, there were two films at the same moment.
Yes.
And I knew the other one was going to be very classical, and it's going to be difficult for the market to have two films about the same subject. And my producers say, okay, we don't have enough money, but cut a couple of millions and be totally free of do what you want. So it freed me in a way.
And I'm wondering if in the course of making the film, you discovered anything that you didn't realize about the world of haute couture.
I didn't realize how well I made a lot of bridges with cinema. It's an art, but it's an industry. You have people who give money. You have a solitary man. It's how I built the film, because I discovered there is a lot of relationships.
It's always been an industry very close to cinema, so in that way it's kind of an interesting reflection on the whole process of making films.
It's a film about fashion, but for me it's a film about cinema too, and it's about art in general. But above all, I think it's a film about melancholy.
That's true. But also there is, I mean, for me, a way in which at the end of it, I kind of understood for the first time why he's an auteur. You know, that there really is this kind of vision that is coming through.
Exactly,
not someone with a great appreciation for
an
haute
auteur
couture.
with a huge pressure of giving like 4 collections every year. I mean, me, if I want to stop for a couple of years, I can. You know, he cannot. The industry is too big. And I know quite a few designers today of fashion, and I am very impressed by the pressure they have.
Let's talk a little bit about Nocturama. One thing about that film, along with House of Tolerance, they're really ensemble films where you really don't have a main character. You sort of have many. What is that like for you as a director to not have one person? I mean, here, of course, in Saint Laurent, you focused so much on his character. What about when you have 7 or 8 characters that you're focusing on?
It's more difficult. If you have one character, it's easier to work, to follow, to write, to edit. But I really like the idea of group. This is where we are starting the conversation with politics. There is something political about the group that I really like. It's just more difficult because in the writing and the editing, when you're talking about this character, you must not forget the other one that you had like 3 scenes before, and it's like a puzzle. But there is something very moving about treating a group for me.
This film, I'm sure it applies to your others, but watching it again, I realized just how close the editing was. And could you talk about the editing of this film, or editing for you in general, in terms of where you see it within your artistic practice?
Well, the editing of Nocturama is very precise, but it's very, very, very close from the writing. If you could see the script, it's very close from what I had at the end. So usually what I do is I really direct the first version of the editing film very precisely. It does not work. You break everything and you work and work and work, and then it comes back to what you wrote, but in a different way. But all these kind of differences of point of view and stuff like that, it's really in the script.
And when you're working with an ensemble, as in this film or in House of Tolerance, what is it like in terms of the directing of the group? I mean, do you try and treat the group as a group, create some kind of, not so much tension, but kind of almost esprit among all the people who are working either here in the bordello or in this case as part of this mission?
As I said, it's more difficult. When you have one actor, you're just on his back, and it's easier. Here, on Nocturama, I felt like a soccer coach, and I have a team, you know. And in fact, I had in my pocket a yellow card and a red card. And sometimes I, throw the card, and if it's a red card, you're out of the shot. It was a funny way to direct them, but it was quite useful. And you always, I mean, I had, 10 actors on Nocturama, and they're all different. That's what's difficult. But it's not a joke that I felt like a soccer coach, because it's exactly how they must be. You know, you're on the bench and you have your 11 players, and you cannot talk the same to everyone, and you try to have a group, and that everyone is good inside the group, but it has to be a group, so it's more mysterious.
Looking back on the film now from a few years, it was 2016, I think, the film at the time caused a lot of controversy. What do you think about that controversy today?
It's just a bad timing. I shot in 2015. I was in the editing in November 15, when we have all these attacks in Paris. But the film was done and edited already. So the day after the attacks, the distributor called me and said, "Can I see the film?" I said, "It's not finished, but I want to see the film." So I showed the film to him, and he was a little embarrassed and said, "We're going to have trouble, And I know, but it's not the subject of the film. We know it's nothing about Islam and stuff like that. It's different. I know, but we're going to have some problems. So when the film came out a few months later, of course, it was very difficult. because the audience doesn't know you make like 2 years. It takes you 2 years to make a film. They thought I did the film after the attacks, and they were expecting from some answers or an opinion or a point of view, and which is nothing to do. My film is about youth,
Right.
So it was very difficult when the film came out. I had a lot of on their social network, a lot of insults and stuff like that. Now, time has passed, and I would say like 2 years after, I think the film is seen for what it really is. The film was bought by Netflix. Netflix is very watched by youth, young people, and today I think it's my most popular film. I receive every day letters from the young people say it's my favorite film. Someone sometimes in the street, some young people, did you direct Nocturama? Now the film is seen like what it is. And we had all these movements in France, like les Nuits debout, les Gilets jaunes, and which is, the film is closer than that, than from Islam, and so it took a little time. The releasing was tough, but now I think it's okay with this film. Yeah.
No, it's interesting how when you look at it a few years later, much of that discussion about terrorism just falls away because it's so different what you're trying to show.
Exactly. I'm just talking about, young people that are lost in their visions of stuff, and they just want to blow everything. And now it's more understandable.
After that, you went on to a very different film. And in fact, it's one of the things I'd also like you to talk about is just how different your films are. I mean, you really, for an auteur, you're someone who it's, while we can find themes or whatever, it's really great to see how you are always trying different ways, different approaches, different subjects. For Zombi Child, for the first time, you worked in my opinion, in what might be called genre. I mean, clearly a lot of people would say, yes, it's a horror film, or Bertrand Bonello has made a horror film. Talk about that idea of making a film in genre, and what does genre mean to you?
Well, sometimes I consider Nocturama as a genre film too, because my two references for the film were Alan Clark's Elephant and Assault from John Carpenter. Right. But Zombie Child is more inside the genre very clearly, even in the title. But I wanted to go from genre and to go back to the origin of the zombie, which is not genre at all, which is colonialism and
it's politics,
and yes, and slavery, and very very. I think it's my more politic film in a way, and I really wanted to go out of France. I've done all my film in France except the first one in Montreal, and after the releasing of Nocturama, I was like a little down because it was really, really tough. I wanted to do something else, to go somewhere else, to go into an unknown territory. And I knew Haiti for a long time because of a friend very close from this country, and he was telling me a lot of stories, and I read books, and I had all these articles about this guy, Clairvius Narcisse, this zombie, and I think I needed to go somewhere else, and to make a relationship with France still, because the relationship between France and Haiti is very strong, very difficult, but strong.
I read that you really insisted on having to shoot in Haiti, which I'm sure was difficult and challenging, considering it's a difficult country, unfortunately, because of the conditions that exist there. Can you talk about your reason for wanting to shoot there, and what was it like to shoot there?
It was very difficult. I could do it because I was a producer, so I took the risk. But all my friends, producers say, you're crazy, you should go to République Dominicaine. It's the same. It's not the same. It's okay, it's 40 kilometers away, but it's very different. Politically, I mean, for me it was very important just to you decide to look at these people, you have to look at these people, It was difficult, of course, because it's the most difficult country in the world. There was a lot of political problems at that moment. We couldn't get out from the hotel for many days. Nothing works. But we made it. I was very lucky to meet some great people there that understood the project. Because when you're French, white, you arrive in Haiti and say, I want to make a film about zombies. So I had to open a lot of doors, but by opening these doors, I met great people, amazing people, and that really helped me and that understood my point of view. And I always said, I'm not going to take the place of a black guy. The film is seen from France. That's why you have all this story with the French college and the white young girl. It's from her point of view. But I think it's very important that France look towards Haiti, more than ever. And they really understood that.
I was impressed by how differently you treated voodoo, which is really such a cliche in cinema, thanks to American cinema and also others. But here you really take a very different stance on what it might have been.
The big voodoo scenes at the end of the film, it's documentary. We met a voodoo priest and he said, why do you want to make the film? So I explained, why is this ceremony? I said it's like the birthday of the death of someone. I said, in this case, we should do this and this and this. And he started the ceremony like at, 8 p.m. and ended at 3 a.m. And we just moved the camera and, it's just like a real documentary.
Wow. And have you shown the film in Haiti? And do you know what the reaction has been?
Unfortunately not, because I finished the film in 19. We were supposed to go at the beginning of 20 to do like a tour in Haiti. Yeah. There are not really cinemas, but I would have done a tour. Sure. But there was like the pandemic. And no, but I showed a great screening was in the New York Film Festival.
Yes.
And because the Haitian community is very big in New York. And the Q&A, I could realize that, there were a lot of Haitian people in the theater. And it was great.
That's great. Speaking of the pandemic, that brings us up to the most recent project that has emerged, which is Coma, which I think has its origins of the pandemic as well. Can you talk about the origins of the film?
There are two origins. The first is during the pandemic, the first one, month of March, I had a command from Fondazione Prada. Yes. They asked me, okay, do a film with no shooting. We cannot shoot anymore. What is it to be a filmmaker when you cannot create anymore new images? And in fact, the first letter of the film, the prologue, that was that film. And then I had a lot of good reactions to this short movie. And I decided to push it a little further, and in fact I had a bigger film that was postponed, and so it's the prologue is a letter to my daughter, and that turned 18, the age when you enter life, and then I decided to push it a little further and to try to go inside the brain of a young girl today. And to feel free about her dreams and nightmares.
What was the writing process like? I mean, seems to me, of all your films, this seems to me a film that might have really been put together in the editing suite, because there's so many fragments. And, the fragments come together in fascinating ways, but it really is, again, a very fragmentary film. Can you talk about, would a real screenplay for Coma exist before you started shooting?
As I said for I don't know which film, but the screenplay is very close from the film. It's very precise. I think if you want freedom, you have to be very precise. So it's very, 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 very close. Everything was written. There's no improvisation, and the structure is very close from the script.
Did you know which sequences would be animated, which wouldn't be animated?
Yes, everything is written in the script very precisely.
What was it like to work with animation? Was this your first time with animation? And could you imagine going on to do an entire animated film?
In fact, I'm not very, I don't know animation very well. And I met two young people that have a studio here. And the way they were talking to me about their job and how they work, how they think, I really liked it. So when I was writing, I said, okay, I'm going to try to put some animation. 2Ds with drawings, 3Ds with the dolls that move. And I loved it, in fact. I loved it because it allows you a first degree. Some dialogues, for example, I would never ask some actors to act them. It's impossible. But when you put the dialogues, when you give them to dolls or drawings, you can have a first degree that you never allow yourself in a normal time, you know. So this I really loved, and I like the fact that, you know, some visual come from, you know, it's not real, it comes from somewhere else, and for the imagination is great. Doing a whole feature, why not? It's just very, very long, very long.
And did you always intend to have letters both at the beginning and at the end?
Yes. The prologue was really short, you know, it was that short movie and I decided to have an epilogue, and then what do you put in the middle?
Talk a little bit about the character of Patricia Coma. I mean, in many ways, I kept on thinking for her something like Max Headroom, you know, this kind of this creature that exists only on screen.
But, I mean, first thing as I was writing was all the dispositif, you know. So the dolls, of course, the archives, and then I found the idea of that girl on YouTube, and it's amazing because it's like for animation, it gives you a lot of freedoms. It's just one woman alone in the camera, and then you can put in her mouth dialogues that you would not put in a normal scene, you know. Does she really exist or not? Is she in the mind of the young girl? This is up to the audience, but it gives me a lot of freedom to say things.
Interesting. So, Bertrand, where do you see French cinema going? Where do you see cinema going?
It's a huge question. It's not dying. That's a good news. It's just moving. There is a huge mutation. Of course, with platforms and series. The thing is, the public is changing. Their will is changing. The way they look at things is changing. American cinema, for example, it's very, very different than what we knew. You know, the studios. Okay, it's Marvel and stuff like that. Independent cinema is very fragile. A lot of interesting people go to platforms because it's where they can work, you know, in terms intellectually and in terms of money. In France, it's very different. We can still make films. I think it's very fragile, but the good thing it has to push you to be better, to be more sexy, you know, to give back to people the desire to go in to see films in theaters. So it's a little scary, but every time there is a mutation, it's very fascinating and interesting.
That's how I kind of feel that it's changing. I'm not sure where it's going, but certainly the change is in the air.
Yes, I don't have the answer. Otherwise, you know, I would be like a genius, very rich. But it's still very exciting, the changes. But we have to be careful and we have to be better.
Okay. Bertrand, thank you so much. What a pleasure to have a chance to speak to you again.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for watching, and hope to see you in some of our future conversations here at Unifrance.